preseason conditioning. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I'm specifically, you mentioned on a text message to me, Tim, that you had a favorite workout that Emil had. I would like you to kind of dive into that if you don't mind.
Well, I don't know if it was my favorite, but maybe the most memorable. But the infamous 10 by 10 back squats post Thanksgiving. Again, I think the first time you implemented that, obviously we didn't know it was coming. We just walked in all innocent, thinking like it's a post Thanksgiving workout. Like we got a couple weeks till Christmas, we're good. You know what I mean? And the rumors started swirling quick because I think there was like a 9 a.m. lift and then like a 2 and a 3. So the guys that went to the 9 a.m. based on their class schedule, like obviously got their asses handed to them. And the word by lunch, everyone was talking like, oh shit, I'm going to the 2 o'clock, like, but yeah, 10 sets of 10. Emil, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think when the first guy racked his weights from completing his set, you started a 60-second clock. And then you had to do 15 lateral delt raises with the 10 kilo or the 5 kilo or the 10 kilo plate. I can't remember. And obviously by the time you were done with those, you probably had 15, 20 seconds left. And then you're getting back onto the weight. And obviously super low weight, but with that little rest, that was absolutely savage. And then I think we had to do sled pushes after that, if I remember. But that became an infamous workout that we
Monstrousitous Minute, episode 5, where we welcome back Emil. It's like having a good night with a girl that and she decides to invite you back for night 2. So you're back for night 2. And we got Bear Handlon here. So I'd like to start off with Bear. Just introduce yourself, talk a little bit about you, your business and whatnot, and we'll reminisce on some pretty cool shit that we've done.
Cool. Bear Handlon. Played football at Yale, which is how I know you guys, obviously. Then went and worked for Red Bull for 4 years, joined the military, and launched a business apparel brand called Born Primitive about 9 years ago. So started out of the garage as a side hustle and turned it into a pretty decent brand. Starting in the gym space. So that's the quick down and dirty.
That's awesome, man. I'm obviously I don't think there's a day where I don't wear something Born Primitive.
Heck yeah.
I love it.
Nice.
I love it. I love your nut hugger shorts that have the lining in them. I wore them yesterday to the water park, and I think I scared more guys with seeing my bright white legs than anything else. But it was pretty awesome. Well, cool
Appreciate
stuff, man.
You repping it.
Yeah, man. Always. So I'd like to just talk about the first time I think I ever met you, which was right before bench testing preseason. Was it 2005, Emil? When their class rolled in?
Freshman year,
So that class, as far as I'm concerned, changed the trajectory of Yale for the next few years. And I remember telling you guys, boys, it's time to get fucking huge. And you guys got all lit up and went and did your bench testing, and the rest of that season was pretty awesome. But Bear, let's talk a little bit about that. What was training like under Emil?
I mean, it was awesome. I think it definitely was a complete adjustment when you got there as a freshman. I think Emil, from my perspective, you had the approach of like I know you wanted to be like friends with us, but you kept that distance, at least in the beginning. And there was almost, at least from like a freshman standpoint, a little bit of like fear, like a respectful fear, but like, all right, I don't want to fucking cross this guy because he can make me pay in many ways. But you got in there, it was no nonsense. It was all business. And you knew, if you're going in there for 60 minutes to hit weights, like you knew what you were doing, and it was all about it. And that was reflected in Emil's tone when you walked in, and it didn't matter. I remember some of our afternoon sessions, there was like a 2 o'clock and a 3 o'clock session. So we'd come like right after class or whatever. Didn't matter like how shitty of a day you had when you walked in there, or, if you were fucking around the night before and you get a lot of sleep, like it was game on. And Emil didn't give a shit what the circumstances were. But we had a great atmosphere. That's some of the stuff I really missed is just being in the weight room with the guys, just throwing weights around. And I think the most epic moments were the infamous hang clean max days, where I think we did that twice a year. I think when we checked in for preseason, and there was a big one in the off season that you guys remember that was just like that was circled on the calendar. And that was a day like it really, from I think a lot of guys' perspective, you didn't really care what you matched. You really just wanted to get a good number because you wanted to like make Emil proud that like you got it done, right? Like, you know what I mean? It was like it was this pressure of like, all right, I can't let this guy down, so like we gotta rip some weight today. Yeah, really, really good memories overall. Absolutely.
So Emil, when you like off-season testing was freaking huge. I remember that. Like my approach from that point of working with you on was like, all right, test week, it fucking means something. So like in terms of getting guys ready for that, like what's your approach, 2-3 weeks out, and then test week, you actually getting them mentally geared up? I mean, what do you do? How do you approach that?
I mean, I think the biggest thing that you're always looking at is, you've got to be hitting some heavy weights beforehand, obviously, to start to feel that. So we were always training in those 90s anyway, for the most part, singles and doubles, and and then just kind of unload them a week and cross your fingers and hope everybody sleeps and eats good. And the worst part, I'll be honest with you, the worst part about testing is like I wouldn't sleep for like 3 nights beforehand, and then you walk in and you're watching guys warm up and you're like, shit, I don't know if we got it. Like, and then all of a sudden they get going and the adrenaline gets kicked in, and and then you just see some special stuff. It was just really cool to step back and watch the guys go. You know what I mean? I think that's, when I look back, I think that was probably the biggest reward. And then seeing a guy hit a number he never thought he could get. Like, I still remember, like, when I got there that first year in 2005, like, the biggest thing I talked about in season was, 137.5. You got to clean 137.5. We don't have enough guys that can clean 300 pounds. We're not strong enough. We're not physical enough. And by the time Timmy was a senior, like, dude, 137.5 was nothing. Like the number rose to like 150, 155. Like, I mean, going into his senior year, that preseason, we had, and I'll never forget this, we had a team average of 198.7. A team average. You had like probably 70 returners, and I would say of those 70, at least 65 guys tested. And you got to remember, a big portion of those are skill guys. And we had a team average of 290, 298.7. Like, it was just crazy. You know what I mean? And but again, it's I think, Jeff, and Timmy, like, you put the plan together, but ultimately it's the guys that do the work. And I think that was what made it fun for me, was just knowing that the plan actually was successful, and what we were doing, even as guys became juniors and seniors, we were still making gains. And that's, a credit to kind of how we were doing things. So.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And I think one thing to add is just like the accountability component that Emil was able to create. I will never forget, and Emil, I don't know if you remember this, but when I checked in as a freshman, there was I won't use last names, but there was a very talented, a guy who had a lot of potential, but maybe didn't have the best work ethic guy. Name was Brandon, and we were doing the 110s. We were doing the 110s conditioning test, which to me, it's fucking ridiculous, because you knew you were doing that test the first day you showed up, and you had all summer to practice it. It's like literally you knew the answers to the freaking test, right? And we had conditioning programming all summer, 110s and a bunch of other stuff that as long as you did it, you're fine, right? I think it was 16 110s with a 45-second rest. I think big skill had to run it in, I think 16, and then skill was 15, something like that.
Yep.
So it's not, not an easy test, but also not difficult. And we were like halfway through, and it was obviously hot in August. And this guy like basically started faking an asthma attack. And Emil, you tore into him, like, and, you know what I mean? And he started yelling back at you, saying he's got asthma, and you didn't give a shit. And clearly he did not put in the work. And that kind of set the tone right there for me as a freshman, just observing, like, all right, well, if you don't meet the standard, like that's how it's going to be. And even guys coming in late to the weight room, I don't know if you remember the blue towel that we would do sled pushes with. Remember that? It was like a bluish, purplish towel. You'd stack the plates, and you'd see guys pushing, getting that quad burn. So it was like, it set the tone that we're here to work, and we're all going to hold each other accountable to the standard. And that was a really good lesson as a young man to see that.
So I remember this kid specifically, because about halfway point that you're talking about, I said, that fucking guy didn't do anything. He got mad at me too. And I'm like, dude, the rest of these guys are flying, man. You didn't do shit. And Yale's kind of an interesting place because you got guys that stick around and you have these guys that go off and do internships and whatnot in the city or wherever else they go. So I'm not as well breathed with that as you guys are, but how do you keep that accountability piece for the guys that decide that their future is more important than the current, which to me doesn't make any sense. What you do now is way more important than what you're going to do in the future, because now dictates where you go. If you execute every day, it's just going to fall in line. That makes sense. But I mean, how do you deal with the guys and instilling that? They're like, look, you still got to fucking do stuff when no one's looking.
I mean, I think our guys knew, like, once we got through year one, like, you know, our guys understood. And especially when we, you know, you go to 2006 and we won the IB championship, and then we get done and then we're in a postseason, and, you know, now we're only where we doing our volume, but then we brought the sleds out and they were like, Coach, we just won the championship. Why we got to do this too? And I think that's what really, honestly, what really changed it. And, you know, it just kind of raised the bar, like, hey, you don't be satisfied. You know what I mean? And our guys just knew. They knew the standard, and they knew, okay, if I can't do what I need to do on day one in preseason, then it's going to suck. Like, it was very clear. You know, there was no favoritism whatsoever. It didn't matter who it was. So like Timmy said, I think when we had the accountability in the program and everybody knew the expectations, so I think it made it pretty simple, to be honest with you. And, you know, some guys had to do some extra preseason conditioning. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
well, I'm specifically, you mentioned on a text message to me, Tim, that you had a favorite workout that Emil had. I would like you to kind of dive into that if you don't mind.
Well, I don't know if it was my favorite, but maybe the most memorable. But the infamous 10 by 10 back squats post Thanksgiving. Again, I think the first time you implemented that, obviously we didn't know it was coming. We just walked in all innocent, thinking like it's a post Thanksgiving workout. Like, we got a couple weeks till Christmas, we're good. You know what I mean? And the rumors started swirling quick, because I think there was like a 9 a.m. lift and then like a 2 and a 3. So the guys that went to the 9 a.m. based on their class schedule, like, obviously got their asses handed to them. And the word by lunch, everyone was talking like, oh shit, I'm going to the 2 o'clock, like, you know. But yeah, 10 sets of 10. Emil, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think when the first guy racked his weights from completing his set, you started a 60-second clock, and then you got to do 15 lateral delt raises with the 10 kilo or the 5 kilo or the 10 kilo plate. I can't remember. And obviously by the time you're done with those, you probably had 15, 20 seconds left, and then you're getting back onto the weight. And obviously super low weight, but with that little rest, that was absolutely savage. And then I think we had to do sled pushes after that, if I remember. But that became an infamous workout that we circled on the calendar every year. And I know some guys, like, I remember Matt Smock, like he basically collapsed in one of the courtyards and couldn't get to class. Like his legs literally locked up. He missed class. People were walking by like thinking he was having some type of medical issue, and he was just, his legs were cramping. But that was an awesome thing. And, you know, I don't know if Emil, if that was like if there was a real, obviously there was a strength and conditioning component to that, but if more of your mindset there was to just set the tone, to kind of get everyone on the right frame of mind for the off season, which obviously is critical for a football team. But I don't know what inspired that.
I'm not gonna lie. Like, I mean, the part of it was this, like, you know, in postseason, I wanted to get a lot of volume in, just kind of regen the body. And then what, I don't know if guys realize, but then we had 2 weeks off. We had basically trained for 10 days or 7 out of 10 days. And then we had 2 weeks off. So it was really just kind of shocked the body after the season. But like you said, like, weight was low, volume was super high, like, just kind of, you know, ligaments and tendons, kind of strengthen everything up, get that volume in there. You know, and I can't lie. I remember, I think it was like my 3rd or 4th year, I did it on the Friday before we drove down to Princeton. And I'm on the bus cramping up. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, I don't need to be doing this stuff. So, you know, but I think that's something too, like I think the one thing that helped me was my guys knew I still did everything. Like, And I remember, I think it was my second summer, and we lined up. So when we started doing 110s, we would start doing 24 with a minute rest. And I think it was the second week at the beginning of the summer. And I stepped on the line with the guys, and everyone looked over, and I was like, "You ready?" And I ran them with them, and they were just kind of like, "Dude, seriously?" Like, you know what I mean? Just kind of that response, like, he's going to do it like that. And I was like, yeah, like, you're not alone in this, procedure and this journey. And so it's, and I think that's a big part of it, because as you guys know, like, trying to coach somebody, trying to push somebody through something, if you haven't done it and you don't know what it's like, especially when you're 10 sets of 10 and you're on sets 8, 9, and 10, and it's not even so much the physical at that point, it's the pure mental, like making yourself just get through it. I think that was a big part of it.
Like my first year at SEMO, the guys, I think that they knew I trained, but I don't think they understood like how much of a priority I put, with that as well. It's that just as important to me to actually do the work than it is for them to do the work. So they saw me before practice the first week. And by this point, I'd been out pushing the prowler around the practice field for 2 hours. Like I was up at 4 a.m. and it was 6 a.m. and one of them rolling in, and it was a senior. It's like, "Man, you okay? What the fuck's wrong with you?" I said, "I've just been here just waiting on y'all." But I remember I had this mindset, like this goal in my mind. I was going to push a mile with a 45 and a 25 on the horns. And that was the day I did it. It was 16 laps. I made a mile, and they fucking rolling for practice. They're like, yeah, let's fucking go. So I think that's super important. So talk to me about Red Bull. What was that like? I didn't realize that you worked for them.
Yeah, I did marketing for them for 4 years before I joined the military. Really cool thing, like really awesome company to work for. They've kind of pushed the limits of like marketing and content. They got dudes jumping from the stratosphere and obviously all kinds of extreme sports. So to get exposed to that was really cool, and honestly was able to take a lot of that knowledge that I learned from them and apply it to the business. All in all, just a great experience.
So you one of the crazy bastards that's jumping out of the airplanes for them on their marketing clips?
No.
Okay.
No, that was, I do that for fun, but no, I was not on they called it the Red Bull Air Force. I was not a member of that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I cannot get out of my head is the fear of heights. And I don't know how somebody gets over that, but for me, like I can stand on a 2-story deck at my parents' house and I look down, like that's a long fucking way down there. So guys that get out of airplanes and jump from, like you say, from outer space and try to navigate that, it's a tough one for me. Like how do a lot of guys that jump? So how do people get over that fear? Is there a way?
Not really. Honestly, if you go up higher, you actually, that fear for a lot of people goes away. Like, for me, like doing things that are lower to the ground is actually a lot scarier than like once you get up to 13,000 feet, like it's so fucking high, it doesn't even matter. You're just like, all right, whatever. So it's actually ironic. Whereas if you're around even like 80 feet, you're rappelling from something or whatever, like that's kind of scary because you can see, you know what I mean? Like, like that'll probably kill you if you take a digger. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you're doing it in a military capacity, it's just one of those things like you don't have a choice. So if you're scared, like doesn't matter. You're just doing it. It comes with the job, right? So a lot of guys, aren't that stoked on it, but it's part of the job. It's what you do. So you got to do it.
So at 13,000 feet, is there any kind of oxygen support or anything like that? What's that like?
No, you don't need any at that. I mean, if you got a little bit higher and stayed up there for a little bit longer, you would, but no, you go up there and then that ramp opens up and you send it. So
that's cool.
Very casual. You just run.
Emil, have you jumped out of a plane? Has Emil jumped out of a plane? That's what I want to know.
Have I? No, but I've been close to doing it so I was supposed to do it with my niece's 18th birthday, and then she didn't want to do it. And then my older daughter just told me the other day that we're doing it when she turns 18. So I'll get there eventually. So, you figure, hey, you got a 66% chance, right? If the first chute doesn't open, then you got a second chute. And if that doesn't open, you're already on the floor. So it don't matter. You know what I mean? So it's just, what are you going to do?
Yeah. I've had to use that second shoot before, so but it works, so we're good. We're still here.
Hey, Tim, I'm curious. Talk about, with you guys from a training standpoint in the military, you were, getting ready to deploy, then you deployed, then you came home. Talk about your team's training during those different areas of pre, during, and then post deployment, kind of what you guys did, or did you do anything different?
Yeah. It's a interesting question. So you'd be really surprised. Like in our crew, a lot of the strength and conditioning is actually on you. And I actually missed the days of like walking into a 2 o'clock lift and all the boys are there and it's very structured and you look at your percentages and you know what I mean? You do what you're told. That's what I thought it was going to be like, but it actually wasn't. It was kind of big boy rules. Okay. Because our actual military training was kind of, that was the main schedule, right? Like we're doing, maybe we start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and we're there till midnight doing night training, and then, it's on you next morning, get up, hit the weights, do some conditioning. And then we're back doing like the actual skill stuff. Okay. When we're doing, there were strength and conditioning coaches that you could work with, like if you wanted guys to write programming for you, and they would even, come in and oversee you work it out. And then there's physical therapy crew and all that. So like we had the resources, but I think a lot of guys kind of did a mix mash of different types of, kind of training methodologies. Like mine was a mix of like kind of what y'all taught me with some more like high intensity interval stuff to just make sure I had a higher metabolic capacity. Like I couldn't just be a strong dude, you know what I mean? I had to be able to keep up, wearing body armor and running around. But definitely, you had to taper, let's say we're out doing land warfare for a month and we're carrying belt fed machine guns and body armor and it's August and we're sweating and we're doing 6-7 hours a day. That's obviously not a morning where you'd go hit heavy legs. Right. So you would have to, based on the volume you were doing, taper that, and then I'm, off weeks, maybe we were a little bit lighter, you could ramp it up. But it really came back to accountability, while there was no requirement to work out, to an extreme degree, there was a built-in peer pressure that if you were not good to go physically, there will be serious repercussions and you would basically get outcasted from the group. And it was a really pure, awesome thing. Like, I just loved it because if you started getting overweight, there was no politically correct way, guys, we would just say, hey, you're fucking fat. You need to get in shape or you're out of here. I loved it, right? Because we didn't, yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? This is not a popularity contest. We're training for one reason. And if that person were to ever become a liability in a serious situation, and we need to, run up a mountainside or throw someone on a shoulder and get them away from danger, and that guy can't keep up, then that guy becomes a liability. So that was a cool part of it. Most of us are gym rats as it is, so that was never really an issue. But every once in a while, there'd be a guy that would kind of lose that motivation, and he would get reminded of what the standard was real quick. So
it's a true mindset of a professional.
Yeah,
you'd expect a professional athlete to execute the same way, except it's the stakes are much higher.
Exactly.
Very cool. I don't know if you want to delve into it. I can always cut this out if we need to, but do you mind talking about selection process and what that looked like for you, or even what gave you the bug to want to do it?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was definitely 9/11. I was in 8th grade when 9/11 happened, and I kind of knew right then, I definitely wanted to serve. And I think for me, just being as a young man, like you wanted to get in the fight, right? Like it was this kind of natural response to see something like that happen and know that there was other men out there like fighting on my behalf. I knew like when I got older, that was something I definitely wanted to do. So that was kind of planted in my brain early. For the selection process, a pretty thorough process, basically a physical test, a psych test, and then like a panel interview. And basically they try to see if from their optics, all right, is this guy physically fit enough to meet the standard, but does he have kind of the intangibles that they look for? Fortunately was able to pass that screening process. And the way they do it is they give you a contract. So when you finish like your boot camp, they promise you a contract to go straight into to SEAL training. And that's the way they get a lot of kind of civilians that otherwise probably wouldn't join the military. But if for the guys that specifically want to do that, they let you get right in. And then you get out there to Coronado and it's just a giant kick in the balls. Just the, you know, baptism by fire. You know, a lot of guys roll in there thinking that that's what they want to do for a living, and quickly realize that is not what they want to do for a living. And you know, the numbers get low real quick. That was a really cool thing to experience and go through. Yeah, I'm glad I was able to slip through the cracks on that one and make it.
Cool. I mean, what's the limiting factor that gets a lot of the guys so they don't make it to the very end of it? Is it the mental stress? I mean, where do you see it?
Well, I think it's a really simple answer. Someone a lot smarter than me came up with this, but I think it's spot on. I think the guys that made it are the ones that actually want to do the job. The guys that don't make it are the ones that want to say they do the job, right? Particularly in our community, there's starting to be some fame and books and movies, and you know what I mean. That people just, you know, I think they just wanted it so they could, you know, say they're a badass, right? And be able to tell their buddies and this and that and whatever might come with that. Those are the guys that would wash out right away because they would quickly realize that, hey, you know, this is this is way worse than I thought. The guys that actually made it were the ones that really wanted to do the job. When we got through, hey, there's a job that's going to need to be done at the end of this, and we generally want to do that job. And you know, obviously, there's a lot of patriotism that would kind of support that and make it guys more motivated to get to the end of the pipeline, so they could then get a seat at the table to hopefully do some good work overseas. But yeah, I think for most guys, it was the cold and the wet and the sleep deprivation. The crazy part is the guys that were extremely physically gifted were a lot of times the ones that would go the quickest, because I think those are the guys that maybe had like really good genetics and like maybe didn't have to work as hard in their athletic career to be good, because they had good genes. And once you get out there, like that's all out the window. You know what I mean? Like the cold Pacific doesn't give a shit about your six pack. You know what I mean? Like when we're laying in there at 2 o'clock in the morning, it doesn't give a shit, you know? So we're all feeling that same pain. And I think the guys that, you know, were a bit more scrappy and had to earn, it a bit more growing up and in sports, you know, fared a lot better. You know, wrestlers do really well. Football guys typically do well. You know, guys that came from structured team sports typically did a little bit better than you know, some of the other guys.
So after you leave there, are there different schools that you go to? I mean, is there a part of that training that you enjoyed the most after that initial bit?
Yeah. Once you kind of do the initial kick in the balls, which really trims the fat significantly. Like for context, for our crew, I think we had started up around 215 guys, and you know, by the end of our what we call Hell Week, we had 19 left. So we were all right. This is the crew we got. You know what I mean? And then once you kind of showed you're hard, right? Now they're like, okay, maybe we can start teaching you some shit. But before that, it's just a giant kick in the balls, because they're not going to waste their time teaching you really anything. You're just working out all day long and just getting your ass handed to you. But once that is done, they start shifting into a bit more teaching. So you learn diving, you learn some basic weapons and, you know, demolition, which is cool. And then when you graduate that basic school, you go on to more sophisticated training, where they call qualification training. And that's when you kind of go through each discipline of the job from 3 to 4 weeks and get really specific with it. So more diving, you learn how to jump out of airplanes, more demolition, land warfare, close quarter combat, maritime operations, stuff like that. And you kind of graduate each of those like mini schools. And at the very end, you're kind of pinned with your warfare insignia. So really, it was a really good time, and I loved all of it. You know, a huge team camaraderie going through it with the same group of guys that you went through a pretty wild experience with. You know, everyone's in shape. You're in San Diego, you're tan, you're with the fellas, you're getting after it. You know, you're shooting machine guns and jumping out of planes and learn how to blow shit up, fighting, doing combatives. Like it's just good dude stuff that you're getting to do every day. But you had to go through a lot to get there. And you definitely had to earn your seat at the table. So it was a really, really rewarding experience.
Cool. I talked to a former Green Beret the other day. His name is Ivan Ranklin, and he was talking about their selection process. And it's not necessarily the stuff that you do that they see, but it's the stuff that that you don't think you're being observed is where you're constantly being observed. It's kind of similar to that, because he said that it was the things that you don't think that they're watching you on are the limiting factors of you actually getting in to be able to do the job. Is it kind of like that as well, or is it more like Rambo? That's the picture of SEALs is like
No,
Rambo.
I mean, it's definitely the instructors are really good. I mean, they're the gatekeepers, right, of the community. And they take that really freaking serious, and they try to make sure that no one that makes it through can't meet the standard. Obviously the physical standard, but also the type of man that they're recruiting, and they want to make it into the community. So that was really cool to witness. That was on their shoulders. And I think they definitely observed not just the physical stuff. We would do peer reviews, which was kind of a wild and savage thing where they would like make you rank like the top 5 and like the bottom 5 of the class, right? And explain why. And they had every guy do it. I think it was like weekly. And if guys were in the bottom 5, particularly early on, and it was like a bunch of dudes were saying this guy's bottom 5, like they would hone in on those guys and get them to go away. I mean, they would make their lives a living hell. So that was the way of letting the system work. They would let us kind of eat our own, right? And even, once we got down to like 19 guys, it's like, all right, we just trimmed from 215 and 19, and you're asking me for like a bottom 5 now? Like every one of these guys is a freaking hitter. You know what I mean? So, but you still had that accountability to your peers, and it made you obviously want to be a team player, do the extra tasks after hours. And we were all kind of accountable to each other because we knew like this is the right thing to do, but also, hey, I got to keep good standing amongst my peers because that's a big evaluating factor. So that was kind of how I think they kept tabs on us kind of when they weren't looking, was allowing us to evaluate ourselves. And then if they would hone in on something, it was like blood in the water. I mean, you were in trouble if you made it on that list. So.
Very cool. So coming out of this and having born primitive and whatnot, what skills have you brought through that's translated into growing your business? Because you've got an incredible business from what I can see. CrossFit's pretty deep into the business as well. Am I still correct on that? But it seems like you're in a lot of different places now, and it's awesome. It's awesome to see its progression since you originally started the business.
Yeah, I mean, so much that you can apply, and obviously, even before the military days with playing college sports, and you learn all the intangibles that become so applicable to running any organization. It's working as a team, task management, being disciplined. I think another would be just learning how to compartmentalize stress, and shift your focus on things and be able to kind of lock it, maybe another thing that just happened in a box for a bit while you hone in on something that really needs to get done. I think that's something we kind of get trained to do, in our training. So yeah, I mean, honestly, I think playing structured sports and then doing something like that in the military, like sets you up with a huge advantage for really anything you're going to do, but particularly running any organization or any team in the future. Like it almost just naturally portray, is shown, through how you lead, because you've seen people lead before you that are way better leaders, and you can pull all these little tidbits from what you witnessed. And Emil would be a great example of that. Like there's a lot of things that I do now that are directly related to what I saw just watching Emil lead for 4 years. You know what I mean? So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, Tim, I got to tell you, the outdoor line, best thing you guys have done.
Thank you. Yeah, we're
like,
pumped.
I'm telling you, man, like, when it hits December, like I bow hunt. So when it hits December and I'm walking in the woods some mornings and it's in the teens, low teens, and I know it's going to be like 25 when the sun comes up, so I'll be fine. But listen, man, the base layer that you guys did is the best, because, you have the light gear, you have the heavyweight gear, but, when you go to like, say, Cabela's or Bass Pro Shops, like you're getting their fleece. And as you know, like that's going to hold water. So eventually you're going to get the chill from that. Whereas like I got this past winter being able to use your base layer stuff, It's the best stuff that I put on. And honestly, like the warmest I've been in the woods when, you're 15 feet up a tree and, it's 10, 15 and it's 25 degrees out. Like, and sometimes one of the spots I hunt, I mean, I'm about a mile into the woods, by the time I hit my stand and stuff. And I just want to say it's been phenomenal. Like I tell people about it all the time, but I think how you've kind of branched out a little bit within the business, but the quality that you guys are bringing to the table, I think has been phenomenal. So.
Thank you. Yeah. I was really lucky, in the military, I got exposed to like kind of cold weather survival training. And in that they teach us like about layering systems and how to like wear your base layer, your mid layer, your outer layer. And if you got to do like, let's say a river crossing and you need to like, wick all that moisture, like how we were basically taught on how all that layering system works. And it's so many people make mistakes on what they wear out into the field. And if the fabrics are incorrect, the whole system is fucked. You know what I mean? So that base layer you're talking about is a merino polyester blend. And it does just that. It's meant to, wick moisture, antimicrobial and something you would want, next to skin. Whereas like some of these other companies, I don't know how they get away with it, because it's just doesn't have the characteristics you need for that next to skin layer. So I'm glad they worked out for you. The heavier weight version, that gets warm. I wore that skiing. And I was cooking. But glad it's keeping you warm up in the stand there.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome.
Well, cool stuff. I really have one more question. I kind of want to direct to both of you. It's we all have kids. What are you trying to instill in your kids that can carry them into productive adulthood? Because I teach in a school. I see a lot of kids that just seem like they're lost right now. They just don't know really what to do with themselves. And I think we've all kind of been in that space where it's like, well, what am I going to do with my life? Well, I don't need to figure it out now, but I need to figure out how to be more of a productive adult that can be a leader in my community. Like, what do you think you need as dads we should be teaching them? And how do we kind of carry that forward and make a better society? Because I think it all starts at home. But go ahead. I'll let Emil go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think the two biggest things for me is, I think first of all, like it's okay to make mistakes, but you got to own them. And that's something that I preach to my kids all the time. Like I'm still going to make mistakes, but the only way you're going to actually grow and learn is to own your mistakes. But again, not be afraid to fail. You know what I mean? So I think that's the biggest thing I talk to my kids about. And then obviously, accountability, you know what I mean? Just knowing that you're not alone, but if you're expected to be somewhere or do something, you're all in on that, whatever that is. You know what I mean? So like when my boy started playing sports, and I remember when Emil's first year playing football, and I said to him, I said, listen, you just have to understand, like, if you walk on that field day one, you're on that field till the day the season ends. Now, if you don't want to play after that, no problem. We're good. But when you make a commitment to something, you're all in. You have to see that through. And then you figure out if you want to continue down that road or you want to go in a different direction. And then just support them through that process. You know what I mean? Because some of those choices they make aren't going to be always good ones. And, they're going to have to figure it out and almost survive in a way, if you will. But then also if they choose not to continue, hey, okay, that's fine. What do we want to try next? You know what I mean? So I think those are probably the two biggest things. And I do it with my daughters as well. I got 2 daughters, 2 sons, and everything is the same. It's, you just gotta own it. Number one. And number two, when you commit, you're in. I don't even care if it's a meeting with somebody. Make sure you're 10 minutes early. And then, however that goes, it goes. But don't think like you're the only one walking through this world. Like when you're in with somebody else, like they're just as valuable in the process as you are. So you have to respect that. And then you go from there with things.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I think there's so much that we learn from playing sports, right? That is so applicable then beyond sports, like the 10 minutes early thing, right? Like Emil, I don't know if you remember this, but in the off season, it got to the point where guys were showing up late to our 6 a.m. conditionings. You remember this? Like they'd be rolling in like 2 minutes late, and you'd be pissed, right? Because like we're about to like warm up, and it's a game on. So you implemented a rule. If anyone was late, we would rerun the conditioning the next day. Like it wouldn't count. You remember this? This was like maybe junior year. You implemented this for me. And you had a buddy that you were paired with, that you would like, you would check on him in the morning. He'd text you like, at 5:40, like, hey, you up? Yeah, I'm up. You good? All right, I'll see you at the gym. And for a couple weeks, guys were still coming in late. And then everyone would yell at that guy because like we would do the 300-yard shuttles. And I know you remember those, but we would be doing it knowing it doesn't, because we're coming back the next morning when normally I think we would do it. We would do it like two mornings a week, right? And it'd be a Monday morning, like, fuck, we're coming back Tuesday morning at 6. But those are the lessons you learn, is accountability, right? So then you start getting there 10 minutes early because you don't even want to chance it. And I think for me that, obviously everything Emil said is 100% like spot on. I think one thing I would add is, my daughter's just over 2, and I want to make sure as she gets older and it knows what's going on, she sees me doing hard shit. Because I think for me growing up, that was a big influence that I didn't realize probably until I was, older and more mature. But, my dad on the weekends, I would roll out of bed 9:30, sleeping in like a teenager does. And he will have already mowed the lawn and mowed the 2 neighbors' lawn, like he would just do it for them because they were old. Right. And it's 9 a.m. He's already been up since 5:30 getting after it. You know what I mean? He's already like clean, and then my mom leaving for work at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the hospital. Like, so that's shit that I just witnessed was like the standard. And before I knew it, you're starting to be like the old man, right? Like, it's like the joke, we end up becoming what we witnessed. So for me, I'm going to make sure that even in some of the shit that I don't want to do, and maybe things that, okay, maybe I've earn the right to outsource, the cleaning service and the landscape. You know what I mean? Like I've worked really hard to maybe be able to afford those things, but it's like, no, we're going to go pull some freaking weeds, and do hard shit because, they have to see me doing that. Otherwise, where are they going to learn work ethic? Maybe they get it from coaches and stuff like that, but I think you're putting that to chance. They got to see it directly from their dad, who, you know what I mean? So I think that'll be a big one for me, is making sure that I don't basically choose comfort because I've earned the right to do it. And I'm 35. Hey, I don't need to do that shit anymore. It's like, well, now that my daughter's coming up, I gotta go back to doing that because she needs to see it. And I think hopefully that'll make a good impact on her.
Yeah, no, Timmy, I agree 100% with that. And it's funny because my older son, like every now and then will kind of dig me on some of that stuff. And, I think the other thing, just kind of in leading off of that, like, never forgetting where you come from. Like my kids know where I came from. Like they know I grew up in a house where I shared a bedroom with my 2 sisters until I was 13 years old. Like we didn't have much, you know what I mean? And I remind my kids how spoiled they are. And they laugh at me because they're like, yeah, we know, like life is good. I'm like, yeah, but life isn't always good. Like life is hard no matter how good you think you have it. But I think you're right. Like everything you learn from what you see growing up and what your parents teach you. And I think that's something that you have to do. Like you have to communicate with your children, because I know, like Emil, like I started talking to him about drinking and drugs when he was in 7th grade, and the biggest thing I always told him, I said, son, promise me 2 things, no pills and don't smoke anything. I said, because you don't really know what it is. But I would always say, you know what, if you want to try a beer, dude, drink a beer. You want to try tequila, drink tequila. Just don't get behind the wheel or don't get in a car with somebody. I'll pick you up. You know what I mean? And, but I think you hit a spot on, Timmy. Like you learn from what you see and what you hear in the house. And I think that's where things have kind of gotten lost a little bit is parents aren't as engaged and with their kids. That's just my personal opinion.
I'd agree with that. My hardest one is I have a 9-year-old who is the exact same version of me as when I was 9. Ash jokes that he's the only kid ever conceived without an egg. Like it's somehow he's 100% me. His mannerisms, his failures, his successes, everything he does, I've been through it exactly. So I have a hard time sitting back and just knowing that you're going to fuck up the same way I did. and trying not to steer him, but still wondering, do I let him mess up on this? Do I let him just eat it and figure it out? Like it's a tough one because I know there's a whole lot more mistakes coming ahead of him that he's going to face that I did. Same thing I did. It's like where do you step in? Where don't you?
Yeah. No, that's very true. That's my youngest, man. And sometimes it drives you crazy because you see it and you're like, you might see something you didn't like about yourself as a kid when you reflect back, and you're just kind of like, no, we're gonna fix that right now today. Like, but like you said, then you have to also step back and be like, you know what? It's good if they screw up. They got to figure it out too. Like, so where is that line? Yeah, that doesn't end it. And it's even harder with boys, like, because it's and then with your daughters, like when they start to get older, and then all of a sudden now you're like, oh Jesus, I got to deal with like other boys now, like that aren't my kids. You know what I mean? And so it's yeah, you just cross your fingers sometimes.
Yeah, it's like we live kind of out away from the school a little bit where they go. And last year for Wyatt's birthday, we had a group of his friends over there. And as I told him after that, that's the last time you ever have these kids over because they're absolute morons. Like you're associating yourself with morons. You do that, you stand around morons, you become a moron. Mm-hmm. So it's like, how do you even freaking help them choose better people when everyone around them is it's a rhetorical question. I don't think there's an answer to my question. It's just it's a frustrating thing as a parent to look on and see this and want to do better for them, but like, what do I do? I think you're being shut out of school also didn't really help things either because kids developed some really bad habits during that time. Mm-hmm. And kids last year, I was with the 6th grade 2 years ago, and man, they were rude to each other. And it's like they had a screen in front of them for almost a year. So just everything is Roblox, and they're talking shit to everybody constantly. It's like people are right next to you. You can't say the things that are on your mind all the time. So I jagged there. I probably shouldn't have. But Emil, do you have any more questions? And other than that, I'm gonna close it on out.
Nah, man, just great seeing you, Bear. Great seeing you, brother.
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Absolutely, yeah. Great to see you guys, and Emil, I hope you know that the shit that you taught us, we carry it forward, man. It's cool how relevant it still is. I mean, I still laugh, chuckle, because I'll still rip hang cleans a couple days a week just for fun. I'll rack it up so you can just unrack it, step back and rip. And I always get a chuckle thinking of, the memories we had and how like serious that was for you was the freaking hang clean, and walking in and looking at your percentages and going, fuck, there's no way that, you'd have to look at it twice. Like that's my percentages for today. Like we're getting up to 97.5 for a single, when you were like, it was just good memories. A lot of those lessons that we learn that, then we start, kind of handing that down to other people that we mentor. So it's a really cool thing, and, very, very appreciative to be able to go through that. And, the lessons that you instilled in us, were freaking awesome. So thank you.
Appreciate it.
Stuff. Barry, tell us how we can plug you.
We're at Born Primitive on social and bornprimitive.com. And pretty easy to find us.
It's awesome, man. And Emil, how about you? I know you got a training business as well. So how can people find you?
Yeah, Ragnar Strength Conditioning, up on Facebook, on Instagram, Ragnar Strength Conditioning. So just trying to help out the young kids.
God bless you, man. And thank you both, fellas. I really appreciate you today. Thank you so much.
All right, guys. Take care.
Awesome.
All right, bye.
Take it easy.